All right, parties, are you ready?
We're ready, Your Honor.
Defense, are you ready?
Ready, Your Honor.
All right, let's bring the jurors in.
All right, for the jury.
All right, good morning.
Yes.
All right, I hope everyone was able to find parking easily. All right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read to you what's called the charge of the court. It's the jury charge. You don't have to memorize it. It will be sent back with you when you begin your deliberations. Charge of the court. Members of the jury. Just one moment. Charge of the court. Members of the jury. The defendant, Oscar Martinez III, stands charged and count one of the indictment with the offense of felony murder alleged to have been committed on or about the 21st day of February 2022 in Bexar County, Texas. The defendant, Oscar Martinez III, stands charged in count two of the indictment with the offense of felony murder alleged to have been committed on or about the 21st day of February 2022 in Bexar County, Texas. The defendant, Oscar Martinez III, stands charged in count three of the indictment with the offense of aggravated robbery alleged to have been committed on or about the 21st day of February 2022 in Bexar County, Texas. To these offenses, the defendant has pleaded not guilty. 1. Our law provides that a person commits the offense of felony murder if he commits or attempts to commit a felony other than manslaughter, and in the course of and in furtherance of the commission or attempt, or in an immediate flight from the commission or attempt, he commits or attempts to commit an act clearly dangerous to human life that causes the death of an individual. Robbery is a felony offense. 2. Our law provides that a person commits the offense of robbery if, in the course of committing theft, as defined below, and with intent to obtain or maintain control of the property, he intentionally or knowingly causes bodily injury to another, or he intentionally or knowingly threatens or places another in fear of imminent bodily injury or death. 3. A person commits aggravated robbery if the person commits a robbery, as defined above, and uses or exhibits a deadly weapon. 4. A person commits the offense of theft if he unlawfully appropriates property with intent to deprive the owner of such property. Appropriation of property is unlawful if it is without the owner's effective consent. 5. Individual means a human being who is alive. A deadly weapon means a firearm or anything that in its use or intended use is capable of causing death or serious bodily injury. A firearm means any device designed, made, or adapted to expel a projectile through a barrel by using the energy generated by an explosion or burning substance, or any device readily convertible to that use. Bodily injury means physical pain, illness, or any impairment of physical condition. Serious bodily injury means a bodily injury that creates a substantial risk of death or that causes death, serious permanent disfigurement, or protracted loss or impairment of the function of any bodily member or organ. In the course of committing theft means conduct that occurs in an attempt to commit, during the commission, or in immediate flight after the attempt or commission of theft. Attempt to commit an offense occurs if, with specific intent to commit an offense, a person does an act amounting to more than mere preparation that tends but fails to affect the commission of the offense intended. Property means tangible or intangible personal property, including anything severed from land, or a document, including money, that represents or embodies anything of value. Appropriation and appropriate mean to acquire or otherwise exercise control over property other than real property. Deprive means to withhold property from the owner permanently or for so extended a period of time that a major portion of the value or enjoyment of the property is lost to the owner. Effective consent means assent in fact, whether express or apparent, and includes consent by a person legally authorized to act for the owner. Effective consent includes consent by a person legally authorized to act for the owner. Owner means a person who has title to the property, possession of the property, or a greater right to possession of the property than the actor. 6, a person acts intentionally or with intent with respect to the nature of his conduct or to a result of his conduct when it is his conscious objective or desire to engage in the conduct or cause the result. A person acts knowingly or with knowledge with respect to the nature of his conduct or to circumstances surrounding his conduct when he is aware of the nature of his conduct or that the circumstances exist. A person acts knowingly or with knowledge with respect to a result of his conduct when he is aware that his conduct is reasonably certain to cause the result. 7, law of parties. Our law provides a person is criminally responsible as a party to an offense if the offense is committed by his own conduct or by the conduct of another for which he is criminally responsible, or by both. Each party to an offense may be charged with commission of the offense. Mere presence alone will not make a person a party to an offense. A person is criminally responsible for an offense committed by the conduct of another if 1, acting with the kind of culpability required for the offense, he causes or aids an innocent or non-responsible person to engage in conduct prohibited by the definition of the offense, or 2, acting with intent to promote or assist the commission of the offense, he solicits, encourages, directs, aids, or attempts to aid the other person to commit the offense. You are instructed that in a prosecution in which an actor's criminal responsibility is based on the conduct of another, it is no defense that the person for whose conduct the actor is criminally responsible has been acquitted, has not been prosecuted or convicted, has been convicted of a different offense or of a different type or class of offense, or is immune from prosecution. 8, you're instructed that an accomplice witness, as that term is herein used, means any person connected with the crime, charged as a party thereto, and includes all persons who are connected with the crime by unlawful act or omission on their part, transpiring either before or during the time of the commission of the offense, and whether or not they were present and participated in the commission of the offense. You are instructed that a conviction cannot be had upon the testimony of an accomplice witness unless the jury first believes that the accomplice witness testimony is true and that it shows the defendant is guilty of the offense charged against him. And even then, you cannot convict unless the accomplice witness testimony is corroborated by other evidence tending to connect the defendant with the offense charged, and the corroboration is not sufficient if it merely shows the commission of the offense, but it must tend to connect the defendant with its commission. If you believe from the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that an offense was committed, and you further believe from the evidence that the witness, Jeremy Martinez, was an accomplice, or you have a reasonable doubt whether he was an accomplice, as that term is defined in the foregoing instructions, then you cannot convict the defendant upon the testimony of Jeremy Martinez unless you first believe that the portion of the testimony of Jeremy Martinez which ascribes guilt to the defendant is true, and that it shows the defendant is guilty as charged in the indictment. And even then, you cannot convict the defendant unless you further believe that there is other evidence in the case outside of the evidence of 9, count 1, felony murder of Enrique Bocanegra. Now, if you find from the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that on or about the 21st day of February 2022 in Bexar County, Texas, the defendant, Oscar Martinez III, either acting alone or together as a party with another, did then and there commit or attempt to commit the felony offense of robbery, and while in the course of and in furtherance of the commission or attempted commission of the felony offense of robbery, or in immediate flight from the commission or the attempted commission of the felony offense of robbery, Oscar Martinez III either acting alone or together as a party with another, did then and there commit or attempt to commit an act clearly dangerous to human life, to wit, discharging a firearm at or in the direction of Jerry Ortiz and thereby causing Jerry Ortiz to discharge a firearm, thereby causing the death of an individual, namely Enrique Bocanegra. Then you will find the defendant, Oscar Martinez III, guilty of the felony murder of Enrique Bocanegra as charged in count 1 of the indictment. If you do not so find beyond a reasonable doubt, or if you have a reasonable doubt thereof, you will find the defendant, Oscar Martinez III, not guilty of the felony murder of Enrique Bocanegra as charged in count 1 of the indictment. 10, count 2, felony murder of Christopher Mejia. Now, if you find from the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that on or about the 21st day of February 2022 in Bexar County, Texas, the defendant, Oscar Martinez III, either acting alone or together as a party with another, did then and there commit or attempt to commit the felony offense of robbery, and while in the course of and in furtherance of the commission or attempted commission of the felony offense of robbery, or in immediate flight from the commission or the attempted commission of the felony offense of robbery, Oscar Martinez III, either acting alone or together as a party with another, did then and there commit or attempt to commit an act clearly dangerous to human life, to wit, discharging a firearm at or in the direction of Jerry Ortiz, and thereby causing Jerry Ortiz to discharge a firearm, thereby causing the death of an individual, namely Christopher Mejia. Then you will find the defendant, Oscar Martinez III, guilty of the felony murder of Christopher Mejia as charged in count 2 of the indictment. If you do not so find beyond a reasonable doubt, or if you have a reasonable doubt thereof, you will find the defendant, Oscar Martinez III, not guilty of the felony murder of Christopher Mejia as charged in count 2 of the indictment. 11, count 3, aggravated robbery. Now, if you find from the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that on or about the 21st day of February 2022 in Bexar County, Texas, the defendant, Oscar Martinez III, either acting alone or together as a party with another, while in the course of committing theft of property and with intent to obtain or maintain control of said property, did intentionally or knowingly threaten or place Jerry Ortiz in fear of imminent bodily injury or death, and Oscar Martinez III, either acting alone or together as a party with another, did use or exhibit a deadly weapon, to wit, a firearm, then you will find the defendant, Oscar Martinez III, guilty of the offense of aggravated robbery as charged in count 3 of the indictment. If you do not so find beyond a reasonable doubt, or if you have a all right, State, are you prepared to proceed?
We are, Your Honor.
All right, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. We as the state, we carry the burden in this case. So we get to speak to you first, we get to speak to you last. So I'm going to speak to you about some of the law that the judge just gave you and that you just read into the transcript. And then Mr. DeLeon will get the opportunity to speak to you. And then Daniel will get the last opportunity to speak to you before you go back there and deliberate. So this is a pretty lengthy document. This has all the law that you need to decide this case. And one of the first questions jurors have when they go back there, sometimes they send a note out that's like, hey, I want to see that police report that Officer Richmond was referring to. And unless it was entered into evidence, you won't have that back there. So all you're going to have back there is the evidence that was entered in this case. And I want to talk to you about the oath that you took. Part of the oath that you took as jurors is not to let bias, prejudice, or sympathy play any role in your deliberations or in the verdict that you reach. And so there's no but here. There's no, well, I believe the defendant is guilty, but I feel bad for him. And you are deciding punishment in this case. The jury is going to decide punishment in this case. And so if you feel any sympathy for the defendant, the time for that is in the punishment stage of the trial. This is right now, all y'all are to decide is guilt, innocence. So I want to talk to you about the law of parties. Daniel talked to you about this last week in jury selection. And the law of parties in the state of Texas, it's in your jury charge, but I want to go over it with you. A person is criminally responsible for an offense committed by the conduct of another if acting with intent to promote or assist the commission of the offense, he solicits, encourages, directs, aids, or attempts to aid the person to commit the offense, and that can be before, during, or after the commission of the offense. And so what does that mean? I mean, we talked about it at jury selection, but it's the convenience store example, right? You and your buddy, you go to rob the convenience store, he's got a gun, you don't have a gun, he shoots the clerk. You're on the hook for that. That's the law of parties in the state of Texas, and that's what's in your jury charge. And so count one in this case is the felony murder of Enrique Bocanegra. And I've highlighted the important parts of this. Oscar Martinez, acting alone or together as a party with another, did then and there commit the felony offense of robbery, while in the course of commission or attempted commission or in immediate flight, did then and there commit an act clearly dangerous to human life, discharging a firearm at or in the direction of Jerry Ortiz, and thereby causing Jerry Ortiz to discharge a firearm, thereby causing the death of Enrique Bocanegra. And so the important part here is commission or attempted commission. So we heard testimony during the trial that Chris gets out of the vehicle with the gun. And you see in here and you see in the charge of the court, discharging a firearm at or in the direction of Jerry Ortiz. But it's commission or attempted commission. So once Chris gets out of that car with the gun, doesn't matter whether he gets the shot off or not, okay? And so that's count one, the felony murder of Enrique Bocanegra. Count two, the felony murder of Christopher Mejia. And they're very similar. But Oscar's responsible for the conduct of the other people in that car that day. And I want to point out to you, in both of these counts, count one and count two, it's commission or attempted commission. And then count three is aggravated robbery. Oscar Martinez, acting alone or together as a party with another, while in the course of committing theft of property, did intentionally or knowingly threaten or place Jerry Ortiz in fear of imminent bodily injury or death. And Oscar Martinez, either acting alone or together with another, did use or exhibit a deadly weapon, to wit, a firearm. And so that's part of party language, right? So he's responsible for the other folks in that car. So the other folks in that car have a firearm. Doesn't matter whether Oscar had a firearm in his hand or not. He's responsible for their actions because of the law of parties in the state of Texas, which is in your jury charge. I want to talk about accomplice witnesses. So what this says, this is in your charge too. You cannot convict solely on accomplice witness testimony. Accomplice testimony must be corroborated by other evidence that connects the accused to the offense. But all the law requires, this is the highlighted portion, all the law requires is that there be some non-accomplice evidence which tends to connect the accused to the commission of the offense. That's all the law requires. And so on this slide, this is all the other evidence that you had in this case. So the testimony of both the police, the CSIs, the medical examiners, Ms. Atkinson, the photos, the videos that you saw, the shell casings, the bullet that the medical examiner removed from Enrique Bocanegra, the guns, the forensic testimony, the diagrams, the documents, and the scientific reports. These are all separate and apart from any accomplice witness testimony in this case. And while we're talking about testimony, I do want to talk to you about a couple of the witnesses. We had to bring Christopher's mother here to testify, and we had to bring Enrique's daughter here to testify. And those were very brief witnesses. And I just want to tell you the purpose of that is one of the things we have to prove is that these people died. And so I know that was difficult, and we tried to make that as brief as possible. But I wanted to tell you the purpose of that is we have to bring those witnesses to say, this is my family member, this is my loved one, and they're dead. But the purpose of that was for their identification. So this is in your charge. This is defense is excluded. And the actor may be convicted on proof of commission of the offense and that he was a party to its commission. And it's no defense that the person for whose conduct the actor is criminally responsible for has been acquitted, has not been prosecuted or convicted, has been convicted of a different offense, or is immune from prosecution. So that's the law in the state of Texas. Oscar can't hide behind, well, hey, wait, this other guy didn't get prosecuted, or somebody else They were, there were a couple juveniles in the car. They were held to a different standard than I was. You can't hide behind that. You can't use that as a shield. And on that same note, I want to talk to you about witness credibility. It's in the jury charge. Y'all, as the jury, are the judges of the credibility of each and every witness. So you get to judge the credibility of the police witnesses, the CSIs, the medical examiners, medical examiners. And you're also the judge of the credibility of Jeremy and Jerry. And I don't expect you to love the way they testify or to love the choices that they made in this case. But I want to remind you that Jeremy and Jerry are not on trial here. Oscar Martinez is on trial. We're asking you to use your common sense when you're back there deliberating. We're asking you to remember the testimony that you heard, to examine these videos, photos again, look at all the evidence that was brought forth, and to hold the defendant responsible and accountable. We're asking you to hold Oscar Martinez responsible for his actions and accountable for his actions. We're asking you to find Oscar Martinez guilty of the murder of Enrique Bocanegra, guilty of the murder of Christopher Mejia, and guilty of aggravated robbery.
Prosecutors argued that under Texas law, someone doesn't have to personally pull the trigger to face murder charges. According to the state, Oscar Martinez knowingly participated in a robbery that directly led to 2 deaths.
Hey, Your Honor, I reserve the rest of our time.
Proceed, Your Honor.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Oscar, Oscar's family, and myself, I want to thank you for your service as jurors. We know that you're taking this case very seriously, and this is a very serious and important case to Oscar and his family. The state of Texas has the burden in this case to prove this case to you beyond a reasonable doubt. The state has not proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt. In jury selection, we talked about many things, but you came into jury selection. You found out this was going to be a murder case. We said, or at least I said, keep an open mind here. And when this case started last week, you probably had an idea, well, this case is probably about this. But now, 1 week later, you have all the facts in the case. This case was not what you thought it was going to be, okay? Let's deal with what we know, not with what we don't know. What we know is that Oscar Martinez did not murder anyone. Factually, he did not murder anyone. We know that Oscar Martinez, there's no evidence that he ever handled a firearm. All right? No evidence he shot a firearm. His fingerprints are not on any weapons. His actions show he stayed at the scene. He didn't flee. He called his mother on the phone when he was at the scene. And I'll rephrase that. This 19-year-old kid, I'm going to call him a kid, even though he's legally an adult. This 19-year-old kid called his mommy on the phone when he got in trouble. And seeing his friend dead on the ground out there in a gunfight that happened, yeah, he was scared to death, but he still stayed at the scene. He did not put the guns in the blue recycle bin. That wasn't him. And he answered police officers' questions at the scene. You saw the body cam of the officer, and he gave his name, address, started saying what was going on. He told Detective Morales in that interview that Christopher and Joshua came up with this plan to take Jerry Ortiz's marijuana. All right? That's what it boiled down to. In the videos, you'll see in the video, when Christopher Mejia got out with that gun, Oscar did not follow him. Why? Because Oscar had no clue Christopher Mejia was going to get out of the truck with a gun in his hand. He had no clue that was going to happen. Oscar didn't drive the truck forward. He was helping Joshua, who had been shot. And you see him twice go up to Christopher, and there's different videos out there. You see him twice go to Christopher and touch him while he's on the ground, trying to assess. And if you look at Christopher, you're probably thinking at the time, this is not good. He doesn't look alive. But there's twice where Oscar touched Christopher. We talked about in jury selection, teenagers make mistakes, all right? And in this particular case, Oscar made a huge mistake because he was hanging with the wrong crowd. The Mejia brothers, the 4 Mejia brothers. He was hanging with them. And if you hang with the Mejia brothers, you're going to end up in trouble, all right? The Mejia brothers had guns on them. We know that now. The Mejia brothers had weed on them. The Mejia brothers had contacts. You know, someone who sells marijuana, hence Jerry Ortiz. Joshua and Christopher Mejia thought that this would be a good idea. Now, the burden to prove. The state has the burden to prove this case to you beyond a reasonable doubt. We talked about that many times in jury selection. The defense doesn't have to prove anything to you. We did bring some evidence forward to you in the form of the defense exhibits 1 through 6. Beyond a reasonable doubt. We talked about the highest standard out there that the state has to prove to you. Now, in the jury charge, we do want you to focus on the elements in counts 1, 2, and 3. Evidence to prove it to you beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, maybe, could have, possibly, more than likely, built in those phrases is doubt, because it's not for sure. All right, possibly, maybe, could have. That's not enough. All right, and the state is asking you to guess on a lot of these different elements. All right, remember, we'll come back to that in a second. But you all agreed you would hold the state to their burden of proving the case beyond a reasonable doubt. So, law of parties. Essentially, they need to prove that a felony occurred and that a death occurred during that felony, and then you have felony murder at that point. So credibility of the witnesses. You're the exclusive judges of the credibility of the witnesses and the weight to be given their testimony. As you know, Judge Boyd handles the law. The 12 of you are judges of the facts. All right? You determine what the facts are. With law of parties, as you see in the jury charge on page 6, and you'll have a copy of this back there in the jury room with you. On law of parties, mere presence alone will not make a person a party to an offense. All right? You heard Detective Morales say that as well. Mere presence alone is not enough. Just because he's hanging with the wrong crowd is not enough to get him convicted of aggravated robbery or felony murder. All right? You need more than that. And if you look at, I kind of summarize it, need a plan or a scheme or something, but here, it states right here that acting with intent to promote or assist the commission of the offense, the state alleges that's aggravated robbery, Oscar solicits, encourages, directs, aids, or attempts to aid the other person to commit the offense. All right? With Oscar, is there any evidence that Oscar solicited this drug transaction to go through? No, there's no evidence. In fact, we know from Jerry Ortiz, he says that Joshua Mejia, the driver, I recognize him from his Instagram photo. They were talking on Instagram to set up a meeting to buy this marijuana. All right? That's not Oscar. Encourages. Is there any evidence Oscar encouraged anyone to do this aggravated robbery? None. All right? Directs. There was no. Jerry Ortiz stated specifically, and I'll go through it again. He never said, Oscar said, do this. Oscar told others to do that. Never happened. Aids or attempts to aid. Once again, where's the evidence that Oscar did any of that? It's not there. So, remember in jury selection how we talked about all these hypotheticals and convenience stores and things like that? The consensus was this is a gray area. It all depends, right? Facts matter. Evidence matters. And now that you have all the facts, all the evidence, it's your time to judge those facts. All right? So what evidence is there that Oscar knew about the plan to commit the robbery? All right, he was there, but Detective Morales told you mere presence alone is not enough. He overheard this plan by Joshua and Christopher right before it happened. All right, they were at the gas pumps for about 1 minute and 15 seconds. All right, and then they moved over and drove up to where Jerry Ortiz came out and talked to him. Not a lot of time. No evidence that Oscar knew that Joshua had a firearm. There's no evidence that he knew that Christopher had a firearm. There's no evidence that he knew Christopher would go after Jerry Ortiz, get out of the Suburban with the firearm. He didn't know that. All right, there's no evidence of that. This was not some well thought out plan. All right, there was no evidence this plan was conceived with Oscar's knowledge until it had already begun. Last minute conversation, and Oscar was hanging with the wrong crowd. He's there in the Suburban. He's overhearing it as it's happening. Let me tell you what is not your job as jurors. Filling in the multiple holes for the state's case is not your job. It is their job to prove this case to you with evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. When you go back to the jury room, it's not your job to say, well, if we think about it, maybe the police could have done this or that or the other, they would have found this. No, your job as jurors is to evaluate the evidence that's presented to you. If the state's case has holes, which it has many holes, it's not your job to do their job for them. Okay? The state must.
The defense painted Oscar as a scared 19-year-old who got caught around dangerous people. His attorney argued there was no evidence Oscar fired a gun, planned a robbery, or even knew violence was about to happen.
Prove that case to you beyond a reasonable doubt. If they fail, you must vote not guilty by law. Let's talk about witnesses. Overall, during the case, I didn't have almost any objections to 90 pieces of the state's evidence. And why is that? Because regardless if it was evidence collection, manner of death, lay witness statements, videos, all of them point to Jerry Martinez killing 2 people. All of that evidence points to that. All of that evidence does not point to Oscar Martinez at all. Let's talk about the recovery of the weapons. Now, 3 guns found in the blue recycled bin. All right, guns put there by Juan Mejia. We'll talk about him in a second. One gun, the Ruger SR-40, was fully loaded at the time. 14 rounds in the magazine and 1 in the chamber. All right, that's a fully loaded gun. Now, it seems like maybe that gun was used and then somehow someone went and fully reloaded it and then it was picked up and put in the recycle bin. Is that likely? I mean, is it possible? Sure, it's possible, but why would they do that? All right. It seems like that gun was not used at all during the commission, okay? The Glock 40 caliber had 1 bullet left, meaning 14 bullets were missing from it, up to 14. All right. That gun was more than likely Christopher Mejia's gun that was eventually shot maybe once by Christopher, but then somebody else picked up that gun and kept on firing. All right. So definitely we know that gun was used for sure. The .380 caliber had 3 live rounds with an extended clip. However, we know that the shell casings, there was only one .380 shell casing found at the scene. So probably that gun wasn't used all that much, if at all. I mean, sometimes the police might not find every shell casing. I think they do their best, but there wasn't a ton of shell casings like the .40 caliber shell casings. And on video, we see Juan Mejia has a gun in his hand. All right, we know he handled it. And there's shell casings at the scene. So on video, you see Juan Mejia, age 15, dressed in the black shirt, the faded blue jean shorts with holes, with the guns in his hand, putting the guns in the recycle bin. That's on the video. You see on the right-hand side is Juan Mejia, black cap, black shirt, blue jean shorts. You also see on the left side, Juan Mejia with a gun in his hand after Jerry Ortiz took off running. All right. And then, you know, Jeremy Martinez, the shirtless Jeremy Martinez, because he testified in court to you. He's 15 now, but he was 13 back then. gunshot residue. I want to talk about gunshot residue, not because it's all that important at all, but just I want to touch on it. I don't want you thinking in the jury room that somehow it was important. It's not important. The forensic scientist, Miss, what we call her, Shopi, said everybody had GSR on their hands. Not unusual if you're having a pretty close area with 20 plus shots going off. Everybody should have GSR on their hands. All right. It makes no difference if it's one microscopic particle or 3 or 6. That's what she told us. Okay. And she used the phrase over and over again. A person may have discharged a firearm, handled a discharged firearm, or was in close proximity to a discharged firearm. And that's what we're dealing with here. With Oscar and everyone else there in the Suburban, they all had GSR. Even Christopher Mejia, okay, had GSR. Oscar was next to Joshua, the driver, who had shell casings, 4 shell casings at his feet. It's possible that Joshua, the driver, was firing through the Suburban right past Oscar, and Oscar could have had GSR put on. Remember the LeBron James powder? Well, that's flying through the Suburban. All right. It's also possible. Remember, I talked a while back. Oscar went to Christopher on video, touched him twice. You can have transference. If he had GSR on him, when he's touching him, moving him, he can get GSR on him as well. In the end, it really doesn't make any difference. Everybody should have GSR on him because they were all in close proximity to 20 shots being fired. Let's talk about Jerry Ortiz. He admits his bullets killed Christopher Mejia and Enrique Bocanegra. There is no doubt that Jerry Ortiz is the one who killed those 2 individuals. All right, no doubt. Nobody disputes that. He admits he was selling marijuana and it was illegal, and he brought his .40 caliber weapon with him that he thought was cool. All right. He admits the person he recognized from the Instagram was the driver, Joshua Mejia, not Oscar. He admits he threw his gun away after the shooting. He admits he returned to the crime scene, his home, looked out the window, still didn't cooperate with the police. He took off. All right. He only went to the police station hours later and then still didn't tell Detective Morales anything at that point. He admits his phone was never collected by the police. He doesn't know if Oscar fired a gunshot at him. He said that. He's like, I don't know if Oscar did anything. He admits Oscar didn't tell anyone to fire at him. Jerry Ortiz does say that Joshua, the driver, told Christopher, just shoot him. All right. He admits Oscar didn't direct, command, or tell anyone to take him or take anything from him. Now, here's the problems with Jerry Ortiz. Jerry Ortiz is a mess. All right. Jerry Ortiz can barely answer questions from the state and from the defense. All right. Jerry Ortiz's perception is flawed, to say the least. We talked about the window not being rolled down, and you're going to have Jerry Ortiz's statement, and we'll talk about the window in a second. But Jerry Ortiz says he went up to the green Suburban. He looked back, and there were 5 to 6 people in the green Suburban. He said they all had guns pointing at him. Once confronted about the number of guns recovered, his answer changed. Suddenly it was, oh, well, maybe it felt or seemed like everybody was pointing guns at me. He was so sure at first every single person had a gun. And then it changed to, well, it seemed like everybody had a gun. Just perception, all right? His recollection comes from a statement he made 10 months after the shooting occurred with the district attorney's office, all right? And today, that statement is 18 months old, all right? So 10 months, if you have to remember something that happened 10 months ago, which would be roughly, I don't know, September, October, would you get every detail right? Probably not. And same with Jerry Ortiz. He's writing it the way that he recollects it. Who knows how that has changed over 10 months and now later another 18 months. And he said when he went up to that window, guns were instantly pointed at him and everybody yelled, "Give us what you got," or something along those lines. Give us everything you got. Let's talk a little about Jerry when he went up to the car. He says he showed up and instantly he saw that Oscar had a long rifle pointed at his chest. He was literally this close, even closer, this close to the Suburban. And he sees a long rifle pointed at his chest. All right. Oscar is right-handed. All right. The air rifle was located in the back of the Suburban. We verified that. Air rifle found in the back. There was no clip in this air rifle. All right. And see the video. The video, it tells you so much. You got to remember in that video. Well, let's talk about this. Jerry Ortiz is lying to you. All right. At 14:27:31 seconds, when you see
The defense spent much of the trial attacking the credibility of key witnesses, arguing investigators relied on inconsistent stories, while ignoring evidence that pointed toward other suspects. According to Oscar's attorney, prosecutors were trying to turn association into murder, despite major unanswered questions about who actually fired the deadly shots. In the end, the entire case came down to one critical question. Did prosecutors truly prove Oscar Martinez was criminally responsible for the deaths that night, or was he simply caught in the middle of a violent robbery gone wrong? Cases like this continue to divide public opinion because the line between participation and direct responsibility can become incredibly complicated inside the courtroom. Let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real,